Hey, how's it going? And welcome back to Consuming Cinema, a show about making and pairing food and drinks from popular movies and TV shows. Today we're making The Godfather with Clemenza sauce from The Godfather. If you haven't seen The Godfather, well, just pause what you're doing and go watch it right now, because honestly,
what's the matter with you?
In all seriousness, it's a 1972 Francis Ford Coppola film about the Corleone family, led by their patriarch Don Vito Corleone, also known as the Godfather, who's one of the heads of the 5 families of the Italian-American Mafia in 1940s New York. But the thing Vito cares about more than anything is his own family.
Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man.
And Vito's favorite member of his family is his youngest son Michael, who we follow in his descent from World War II hero and all-around decent dude to quick-tempered husband, stone-cold killer, and heir apparent to the title of Godfather. In the scene we're talking about today, Michael receives a call from his then-girlfriend Kay, while his father's close friend and business associate Clemenza makes dinner beside him. Clemenza then shares with Michael both some relationship advice as well as the recipe for his famous spaghetti sauce.
Hey, Mikey, why don't you tell that nice girl you love her? I love you with all of my heart. If I don't see you again soon, I'm gonna die. Hey, come over here, kid. Learn something. You never know, you might have to cook for 20 guys someday. You see, you start out with a little bit of oil, and you fry some garlic. Then you throw in some tomatoes, some tomato paste. You fry it. You make sure it doesn't stick. You got it to a boil. You shove in all your sausage and your meatballs. Huh? And a little bit of wine. And a little bit of sugar, and that's my trick.
But before we start our sauce, we'll first start by making our meatballs, which starts with 1/3 of a pound each of ground pork, beef, and veal. You can always swap 1 or 2 out with another to equal a pound. And to our meats, we will add 1 egg, beaten, as well as 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs, in addition to 1/2 cup of ricotta cheese, as well as 5 cloves of garlic, chopped, and 1 small bunch of parsley, chopped, in addition to a little bit of salt, and a little bit of freshly cracked pepper. And I'm also going to add a teaspoon of Calabrian chilies, which is optional, but I love the little heat it brings. And then we're going to start mixing everything together with our hands, but as I did, I realized that I'd forgotten one very important ingredient, and that one important ingredient is 1/3 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. Now, once you've incorporated your Parmesan, mix everything together for real this time until it resembles a big meatloaf. Now we are going to roll our meatballs, for which I'm using a sill mat on a baking sheet, as well as a melon baller. So, grab a couple of scoops of meat with your melon baller, and then roll yourself a meatball, which should come out to around between your thumb and your middle finger in diameter. Then repeat that process until you have between 12 and 15 meatballs. Then I did this totally unnecessary step of trying to brush some olive oil on top for color, but spoiler, it didn't really work. And then we're going to put these meatballs in a 425-degree oven for 15 minutes. And when they come out of the oven, they should look spectacular. And now we are going to work on the other elements of Clemenza sauce. So next, into a hot cast iron pan, we are going to fry up 5 hot Italian sausages. You can also use mild if you like, but I prefer the hot. And fry the sausages for 8 to 10 minutes on the first side on medium to medium-high heat. You don't want it to be too hot so that the outside doesn't burn before cooking the inside of the sausage. And once you get a nice brown color on that first side, we're going to flip those sausages over to the other side for them to brown for 8 to 10 more minutes. You can even turn them on their backs to make sure they're brown all over. And once they're nearly done and brown on all sides, we are going to remove the sausages and set them aside with the meatballs. It's important to note that these sausages are going to finish cooking in the sauce, so if they're not completely done right now, that's okay. Now it's time to make Clemenza sauce, but before we do, we're going to start cooking our pasta, for which we'll need a large pot of boiling salted water. I'm using box pasta because if we go back and rewind the tape, you can very clearly see that Clemenza himself is also using boxed pasta. So go ahead and cook the pasta according to the box, and make sure to stir it every now and then so that those noodles don't stick together. And now it's time to start our sauce, and I'm going to be going slightly out of order of what Clemenza did while using all of the same ingredients. Start by drizzling a couple tablespoons of olive oil into a Dutch oven, and then we are going to fry up 4 cloves of chopped garlic. Give the garlic a stir and fry until it's nice and aromatic. I don't want the garlic to get too brown or God forbid burn, so I'm going to soon after deglaze the Dutch oven with a cup of red wine. Then give that a stir and let reduce a little before adding a 12-ounce can of tomato paste. Stir that mixture up and bring to a boil. before adding 2 24-ounce cans of peeled or crushed tomatoes, ideally San Marzano, but whatever you can get your hands on. And while Clemenza doesn't, I'm also going to add a half a can of water to the sauce as well, in addition to a couple tablespoons of sugar to taste. Then give that a stir and bring it to a boil. Now we'll take off our pasta and strain it, keeping it covered to stay warm. And once your sauce reaches a boil, it's time to add your sausage, followed shortly thereafter by your meatballs. And give everything a good stir and make sure all the meat is covered in sauce. And then I'm going to add a little salt to taste and stir again. And you're going to want to simmer this until your sausages are cooked all the way through, which you can test by cutting into one, which I did off camera, and stir occasionally, making sure the sauce doesn't stick. And once your sauce is done, it's time to toss your pasta. So put what will be 1 serving of spaghetti into a big bowl, and then scoop a few spoonfuls of sauce on top. Toss with tongs until every piece of spaghetti is nicely covered in the sauce. And now it's time to plate. So we'll start with our pasta tossed in our sauce, and onto it we'll put one of our meatballs, as well as a piece of sausage, which you can see is where the meatball once was because the first meatball took a little bit of a tumble. So we'll put on one more visually superior meatball, and another, and an additional sausage for good measure. Now your pasta is very nearly done. Lastly, we'll top with some freshly grated Parmesan, as well as a little bit of Italian parsley. Now it's time to make the Godfather cocktail. And you might be thinking, wait, there's no cocktail called the Godfather in the movie The Godfather? And you're right, because this cocktail is in fact the first on this show that's not actually from a movie, but rather inspired by a movie. Because according to legend, meaning according to the Italian Amaretto brand Disaronno, the Godfather was a favorite drink of the Don himself, Marlon Brando, hence the Godfather moniker. So to make this cocktail, we'll first start in a rocks glass, to which we'll add a single cube of ice. I'll put a link in the description for the mold I use to make these ice cubes. And then to this glass we'll add 1 3/4 ounce of Scotch, as well as 1 1/4 ounce of Disaronno, or any Amaretto. And I'm also going to add a dash of orange bitters, which is optional, but I felt in my experiments that it really adds a lot to the drink. And you should give it a stir, but I didn't because I was rushing, before garnishing with an orange twist and a maraschino cherry. And there you have it, your Godfather cocktail with Clemenza's sauce is finally complete. Now there's nothing left to do but to taste it. So we'll get a nice bite with some pasta and some meatball, as well as a bite of one of these sausages. And I gotta say, this is one of the best versions of a basic marinara that I have ever made. The sauce is no frills, it's simplicity at its finest, and I can't say enough good things about this meatball recipe. But how does this spaghetti and meatballs pair with a Godfather cocktail? Well, the Godfather cocktail in and of itself is excellent. The Amaretto is such an effective and balanced complement to the Scotch, and like Clemenza's sauce, it is sublime in its simplicity. But while apart, both of these concoctions are worthy of 2 thumbs up on their own, paired together it's more like a 1.5 thumbs up, which makes sense as this pairing wasn't an official duo from the movie. If you like the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Tell us what you'd like to see. Please leave any suggestions for future videos in the comments below. Full recipes will be included in the link in the video description. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Consuming Cinema. And don't forget to join us next week when we make a pairing from The Godfather, Part 2. Thank you for watching.